Alrighty, welcome everyone. My name is Mirna Najera Perez, and with me is Diana, our Spanish tutor. Today we'll be presenting some helpful study strategies for how to study for Spanish. I am an academic coach at the Learning Center, and Diana is a tutor at the Learning Center, and she and I are both fluent in Spanish. Spanish is actually my first language. I'm from Durango, Mexico, and when I was 6, I moved to the US, so English is actually technically my second language. I also speak French. I've been studying French for about 10 years now. Diana, would you like to introduce yourself a little?
Yeah, my name is Diana Santiago. I'm a Spanish tutor, and like Mirna, my first language is also Spanish, but I've been speaking English since I was really young, so I'm fluent in both.
Perfect. So at the Learning Center, we offer several different services for free for PSU students. We offer some on-campus tutoring. Unfortunately, that is not happening for the winter 2021 term. Um, Everything will be taking place online, including academic coaching and tutoring sessions. We also do offer Roads to Success presentations, a college success course as well, and like I mentioned, academic coaching. And again, these are all services that are available to PSU students at no cost. And we are very flexible. We meet with you and chat about ways in which we can help you be more successful at PSU. So today's objectives, by the end of this workshop, clearly you can tell English is not my first language. By the end of this workshop, you should be able to understand the importance of the study cycle in relation to learning Spanish. And you should be able to identify specific active learning strategies that you can apply to your Spanish courses. You should also feel prepared to apply these strategies in your coursework. So this is what we'll be discussing today. We'll be looking at the study cycle and at each step individually. So we'll go over the step number 1, which is to preview. Step number 2, attend. Step 3, review. Step 4, the actual process of studying. And step 5, assessing your study habits. Alrighty, so the very first step we'll be going over is preview. And by preview, we mean exposing yourself to the material. You can do this by pre-reading the material before class. So this includes skimming through your chapters, looking through the articles, and all of the reading assignments that you've been assigned. You want to make sure you look at the reviews, you want to look at the chapter objectives, and also take a look at the pictures and diagrams included in the articles. You want to write down any preliminary questions that you might have and make sure that you have them so that when you attend class, you can feel prepared to ask those questions. You also want to check your syllabus and see what material will be discussed during the class times. And the reason why you want to preview the material in advance is because you'll be far more better prepared to learn new concepts. When you've been pre-exposed to the material, you are sort of paving the way for your brain to remember that information, to retain that information longer.
So what would this look like in a Spanish class? Look through the PowerPoints notes before class. If the teacher provides them, sometimes they don't, but it's always good to have either a printout or on your laptop. Have your syllabus out. It's always helpful, especially during this first week. We're gonna want to look at our syllabus and what we're doing each week. Have an idea of what will be taught during class. As we mentioned, this will be easy and helpful to retain more information. If it's a Spanish speaking course, practice Spanish before class. It's always helpful to come in, especially in the early weeks, to practice a little bit beforehand, just so you don't feel overwhelmed with so much Spanish, especially if this may be your second language and you're barely learning. Review vocabulary. This is for the same reason as you don't want to be too overwhelmed. And if there's any words you don't understand, maybe search them with the Spanish dictionary.com, and that's where we've added this link, so feel free to follow it. Note the concepts that you're struggling to comprehend. Maybe you have some weaknesses and some strengths. So maybe dive more into the weaknesses beforehand. And then look ahead at the coming material in the unit. And that's, again, going through the syllabus and making sure that, okay, this week 1, we're gonna go through acentos. Week 2, we're gonna work on blah, blah. And then, as we mentioned, write down your questions that you want answered in the classroom.
Alrighty, step number 2 is to attend. You want to go to class, especially during these times. It's easy to just get overwhelmed and, feel exhausted from being online and just feel unmotivated during these times. But you have to attend class. You have to hold yourself accountable. You have to be present and you have to be engaged. And ways in which you can ensure that you are actively present during your online courses is by attending your Zoom lectures or by actively participating in discussions that are happening through D2L. So yes, this looks different now. Yes, attending class is not necessarily in the traditional way anymore, but you need to make sure that you are actively attending / being actively present. Ways in which you can show that you're being present and you're paying attention is by asking questions throughout your Zoom lectures and by participating in discussions and activities. Again, if your courses are not meeting through Zoom, show active participation by posting a comment, responding to your peers' comments or posts, emailing your professor, anything like that. It really shows that you are trying your best to be as actively engaged in your course as possible. Some tips for remaining active during remote learning is by turning your camera on and by choosing the speaker view to stay engaged. So if you have your camera on, you'll be conscious of how attentive you are being during class. When you have your camera off, it's easy to get distracted by anything around you, by your environment. You could get distracted, you could start watching TV, or you could start cleaning when you should be paying attention. So rather than being distracted and just having class in the background, you should be fully present and fully attentive. You also want to use the chat or raise hand functions for questions. Again, asking questions or making comments will show that you are engaged with the lectures, with the material you're learning. And this is important because it is hard to stay engaged over Zoom. However, the more active you are with the material, the more you'll retain that information. It's essentially, you're setting yourself up for success by doing this.
So what would this look like during a Spanish Zoom lecture? Try to be present during class by, as Marina mentioned, turning off TVs, maybe putting your phone on silence, all these outside distractions that may cause you to kind of have the classroom as background, whereas the classroom should be the priority. And one thing that, there's going to be different types of people how you learn, but take notes. Even if you already have the presentation, what I like to do is, if I have the presentation printed out, don't take notes on everything the professor's saying, but maybe, okay, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm going to write a note on that. And that's super helpful because not only are you staying engaged, but you're also helping retain the information. Have Google Translate in hand if needed, but don't rely on it. So this is only if on extremes, like, okay, I really don't know what this word is. But if you can read around the context of a word and figure it out yourself, that's always the first option. And obviously attend study sessions. So if you're able during class, if the professor tells you to attend study session, attend their office hours, but and then meet with our Spanish tutor, which is, we have a couple, but I'm one of them, which is super helpful. But yeah, during class, like Marina mentioned, there's a lot of things that you can do to be active and stay on track with what is being taught.
Alrighty, another step in the study cycle is to review the material. You want to ensure that you review the material within 24 hours, and this could you could review by rereading or reworking your notes if necessary. So go back and look at your notes. There is no point in taking notes if you're not going to use those notes. You need to actually go back and look at your notes, review, pay attention to any gaps that might be present in your notes. So identify any gaps in your note taking, or perhaps any gaps that you might have. If you really don't understand, why radio is feminine versus masculine, because that's something that I struggle with, for example. So it's la radio, not el radio. Something like that you might want to ask your teacher about, your professor about. Make note of any lingering questions you might have. Again, that was an example that I gave. Anything like that. If you are struggling with nouns, or with just the gender that is associated with the nouns, anything like that, it's a good idea to just take notes. And then also consider your learning style when choosing a note-taking system that will work for you. So think about yourself. Take a moment to reflect how you learn best, or when you are most successful as a student. And this is important because studies show that reviewing your notes within a few hours after class considerably increases your retention rate and your understanding of the material.
So what does this look like for Spanish? Review pronunciations. This is really important. As you can, as was mentioned, right after a course, that's if a teacher pronounces something, it is really important to practice that right after, or a couple hours after class, just because it'll be really helpful for you to understand how it's pronounced. And this is really important in Spanish, just because some words can be, whether it has an accent or not, it'll be pronounced differently. So like papa, like dad, father, is like with an accent, and then like papa, like it's potato. So just practice that. It's super helpful. Write down the gender of words as well as its category. So as mentioned with la radio compared to el radio, and write notes about why it is the way it is, and prioritize things that you don't know. Take notes of concepts you struggle with to understand when your professor talks about them, and review that by looking at notes, and even you looking at not solely what you learn in class, but maybe textbook or what you've learned in previous courses. And review acentos, as I mentioned, that's really important. If you're struggling with them, ask the professor or a TA, or go to study sessions, whatever it takes. But it's really important to get these down, especially because they're so hard. Oftentimes other students may have the same question as you do. So feel free to, use the icon for raise a hand, or talk to the professor after the class, but make sure this gets addressed, just because this is a common struggle.
Alrighty, so the reason why reviewing information is very important is it's forgetting my English. This graph is a great example as to why you should review information. So this is the typical forgetting curve for newly learned information. As you can see, just within the first day of learning something new, you will only retain 80% of that newly learned information. Within the first day, you lose 20% of what you've learned. However, as you can see, the more you review, the longer you will retain that information for. And I would also argue that the more information you retain as well, not just longer, but the more substance you'll remember. This is a very, it's a very visual way to understand why reviewing information is very important. Now, the other thing that you also want to keep in mind is, in order to review successfully, you need to understand yourself as a student as well. You need to understand how you learn and how you learn best. So take a moment to think about who you are as a student and how you prefer to learn. Are you a visual learner? Do you like to draw out concepts? Do you like to think of vocabulary terms in terms of, pictures or symbols? Like, do you associate pictures with words? Are you a visual text learner? So do you use lists? Do you like to rewrite ideas? Do you like to create and answer test questions? Are you an auditory learner? Do you like to talk through the material? Do you read out loud? Or are you more of a kinesthetic learner? So do you have to be expressive as you're learning? Do you need to be physically active while learning? Again, keep this in mind so that when you're reviewing in a way that's best suited for the way you prefer to learn. And there is actually a learning style assessment available through our Learning Center website, I believe. And if at any time you need access to this, I, as an academic coach, have access to it too, that I can provide this assessment so that you can see how you learn best. Also keep in mind how you take notes and what type of notes work best for you. Some people prefer Cornell style notes. That is where you write sort of keywords on the left-hand side, and then you write like a summary of those keywords on the right-hand side, and then you write a short summary at the end. You might also be more of a visual learner, so you might need something more like a map style note-taking strategies where you sort of link words to main ideas, or you might be someone who prefers to sort of bullet point their notes. Find which way works best for you. And also, they don't have to be, they don't have to be individual from each other. You can also mix different strategies, just whatever works for you. If you need to highlight words, if you work best with colors, add some color in your notes. If you need some diagrams, add a diagram. Again, it is about you. It is about making sure that you are successful as a student. So you need to take the initiative to consider how you learn best so that you can be as successful as you can be in your Spanish courses.
Yeah, so what would this look like in a Spanish course, right? For oral exams, set up a meeting with tutors, ask a friend to help you out. It's always good to practice before an oral exam, especially if you're not too comfortable with it. Maybe that's why a friend comes in, you feel more comfort. But even with tutors, there's no judgment, so feel free to reach out. And it's a great way to, not just for this oral exam, but to practice a real life scenario. Review your script, practice different scenarios where you might use the vocabulary you are being tested on. So let's say you're working on words to use like usted, ustedes, nosotros. Don't just necessarily stick to one script. It's very helpful if you can combine that within different scenarios. And as I mentioned, if you really want to get the most out of this course, use it with others. Maybe you have a friend that's a Spanish speaker, talk with them, ask them, hey, what are other ways that I can use this other than what you already have? And then for written exams, review your notes. It's always important to go over, whether that's you're going over your mind mapping notes, your Cornell notes, or the bullet points. It's always important to go back and either look through it, speak it out loud if that's how you remember learning, write it out if you're a visual text learner, then review what you still need to work on. I would say put more emphasis on this, because then you can rewrite, it says rewrite what you still need to work on, because they say that you retain more of what you write because you're memorizing that, like what you're writing. And then create a review sheet. This is always important for not necessarily just Spanish, but I would say for a lot of courses where review sheets of what you need help on is very helpful. And this can be done in various different ways.
So you want to make sure that you are actually studying. Now you need to try and make any passive study strategies into active ones. So this could look like repeating the material. Repetition is key, especially when you're learning a language. You want to make sure you are repeating the correct pronunciation several times so it sticks. You want to take practice tests. You can, quiz yourself on acentos, or you can quiz yourself on the gender nouns or gender, the gender of words, anything like that. You want to make sure you're constantly quizzing yourself, making sure you're actually understanding the material. So if there's any like major concept in your Spanish courses that you're really not understanding, by quizzing yourself, you'll be able to identify where it is that you're having trouble so that you can then meet with Diana or with your professor to go over what you're not understanding. You also want to use the provided study guides. Diana touched a little on this. You can also make your own. So if the professor's study guide doesn't really work with the way you learn, then make it work so that it works to how you learn best. Make it work to your needs. And with everything going on right now, it's can be hard to motivate yourself, so you might consider studying in groups. You can do this by connecting with your classmates, meeting with one or two other classmates to go over the material. You want to be periodically checking in with your professor. You can do this once a week, you could do this once every other week, or you can do this as often as you need to. And attend their office hours or email them. You don't have to necessarily always meet with them through Zoom, just as long as you're reaching out to your professor, letting them know where you're at in terms of how you're doing in their class. And this is important because exams are focused on output. So it's important that you practice processing information in that way. And working with others can also help clear up any confusion that you might have. And again, these are difficult times. It can feel really lonely if you're, you know, in your room all day long staring at a computer. So it's not a bad idea to think about reaching out to either Diana or some people in your class to see if you can do like little, virtual study sessions. Alrighty, so I went over a little bit about passive study strategies and active study strategies. So both are great, both work. Do make sure you incorporate both, but try to be more of an active learner rather than a passive learner, because active study strategies are actually proven to be far more successful in the long term. So this might look like, instead of just reading or listening to a lecture or just watching a video, be actively engaged with your reading assignments or be actively listening to the lecture. You can also actively watch a video. So what do I mean by that? Well, while you're reading, pay attention to the material. Read it, from the start of the reading assignment to the very end of the reading assignment. And as you're reading, be critically engaged with the learning material. Write down any questions you have, or if there's something that you don't agree with, or that you do agree with, and the reason why, write it down. Connect it to your life, connect it to any current events. If you're reading about, the situations in, the political situations in Mexico right now, this might be something that you might cover in your Spanish courses. Connect your reading assignment to, what are the current events, like how is Mexico handling COVID-19 or anything like that. You also want to actively listen to a lecture. So again, the way you can do this is by asking questions in the chat, or by raising your hand, or by looking at your professor while he's speaking, so having it on speaker mode. Watching a video, again, think critically as you're watching the video. And also you can do this, you can actively learn by taking practice tests or creating note cards and then quizzing yourself with those note cards, or by sitting with a friend or a tutor.
So how do these strategies look like? So one thing is that you can create a structured study plan. We'll go to the next slide and show you a structured study plan where you follow, okay, I'm gonna set a goal, work on it, treat myself, and then see what I did. But then you can also make other things, which are more engaging, which I would say make a Quizlet. You're able to share with others, and you're able to see other people's Quizlets. This is very popular in for college students, just because it is, even if you're not taking it, so you can find a course from like Spanish 211 that someone took in another college and still use it and learn from it. But I would say Quizlet is very fun because you can also do little quizzes, and you can also just look at the vocabulary list. And another fun one that I forgot to add here was Kahoot. That's if, let's say with other classmates, you want to make a fun game where you want to, if you're competitive like I am, I love to play games. So you can make a Kahoot, and you essentially like Quizlet, you make questions and then you put answers to it, and then everyone's playing. So then whoever answers the quickest correctly will get points, and you could just make it more fun. You could also do scheduling a tutor session with me. There's other tutors, so if my time doesn't work, you have a lot of availability. Schedule a meeting with the TA or course instructor. This will be really helpful, not only just to learn a material, but also make connections with your instructor. This is very important, especially like looking beyond the course. If you ever need a letter of rec, I would definitely recommend making these connections with your TA or your course instructor. And read out loud when you're reading in Spanish. This is really helpful, and it's okay to read it. So as Mirna was mentioning, actively reading is also, while you read, it's also very helpful to read out loud, especially if it's another language, and take note of what is working, what's not, and what pronunciation you need help with. And there's no time frame on how fast you should read something or how slow. So take your time on what you need to learn and study the way that works best for you.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add that for the most part, I believe Quizlet is free, so you can use it and not have to worry about paying anything.
Yeah, so is Kahoot.
Oh, yeah. And of course, you want to assess. So assess means that you periodically check in with yourself. What's working? What could be changed? What could improve? Look over what you missed in your tests or quizzes, and again, like just analyze what it is that you need to improve on. Want to also make sure that you're organizing your study time. So again, assess how you're studying or how effectively you're studying. And you might want to do this by reflecting on the system that you have done, how well you're self-managing yourself. And then also just consider structuring your study sessions, which we'll go over in just a minute. This is important again, because by checking in with ourselves, we're able to recognize which areas are strength areas and which areas are growth areas. And organizing your time can help you, it can help you reduce stress, and it can help you stay on track to meet your goals.
So what would this look like in a Spanish course setting? Consistency is very important. Being able to constantly be able to go back and assess what you're doing and learn from it will be helpful, because you'll know what you'll need to get better at or what you need more work on, where your weaknesses are. Studying with intention is also important, and that's where like also consistency comes in, where you're able to study and not just study like, oh, okay, I have to read this and whatever. No, it's okay, I need to read this because I need to learn this and that. Track what you feel confident on after studying. It's always important to know what what you're good at, and also what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and what you can work on. So that'll be important in helping you learn, okay, what do I need to study? What do I need to emphasize more? Assess whether the study methods you're utilizing are effective. Maybe you're writing everything down, but you're not retaining a lot of information. Maybe try being more of an auditory, write it out and talk it out. Maybe you need to use highlighters, be more creative, graphic learner. Reference your quizzes, exams to determine where you can improve. This is very important, especially for a course like Spanish, where you're learning a different language, where you have to go back and assess, okay, this is what I need to work on. And because Spanish is a language, this is stuff that you need to get the basics down in order to move forward, and it'll be super helpful.
Alrighty, so you might want to, again, take the moment to really reflect on how you study and how you might want to change your study habits. So take about, a moment or two to really reflect, what have I done in the past? Since I was in K through 12 till now, what have my study habits looked like? When was I most successful, and why was I successful during the time? You reflecting on yourself and who you are as a student is going to be really helpful in terms of really understanding, again, how you learn best. But now that you've done that, now that we've taken the time to think of yourself as a student, think about ways in which you can tweak or in which way you can improve the way you study. So this might be an effective studies strategy that you might want to implement. This is a way in which you can structure your study sessions. So the first thing that you'll want to do is take about 2 minutes or so to write down a goal. Now, I would encourage you to write down a process goal. So a process goal is essentially an action step that you will take in order to achieve an outcome goal. An outcome goal is essentially your overall goal, the main goal for your Spanish course. That might be getting an A in Spanish class. Well, how will you get that A? That's the action step. Write that down, write down an action step goal. So this could be, how many pages or chapters do I want to read? How many vocab terms do I want to memorize within this study session? Or how many pages do I want to write down for this Spanish essay that I'm writing? And then what you want to do is you want to study with focus, or in other words, you want to study with intention. Again, think critically of how you work best. If 30 to 50 minutes is too much time to be focused on on one course, maybe break it down. Maybe instead of 30 to 50, do 25 to 45 minutes of dedicated study time. And again, you want to interact with the material in active ways. So you you might want to use other resources to improve your language skills, such as YouTube or language apps. Reading might not be doing it for you, or just simply reading or just simply watching the lecture videos. You might want to incorporate some YouTube videos or something. Just be creative, be active with the way you're learning and studying. And then you want to reward yourself. This is very important because you want to take the moment to recognize all of the work you're doing, all of the efforts you're putting into your course, and this will actually motivate you to continue to achieve your goal. Because when you set a goal and you work at it, you chip at it, you want to make sure that you're rewarding yourself along the way, because that'll keep your eye on the big prize, which is to achieve that A, or to earn that A in your Spanish course. This could look like taking a walk, eating your favorite snack, grabbing a coffee, anything like that. I would encourage that while you're rewarding yourself, you try and stay off the computer or off your TV, just to give your eyes a break. We're on our computers all day long now, so it's a good idea to just take a break from a 10 or 15-minute break from your computer / the TV. And then finally, you want to take 5 to 10 minutes to review. Go over what you just studied and return to your goal. Did you achieve your goal? Did you successfully memorize those 15 vocabulary terms you were hoping to memorize? Did you successfully finish those 5 pages you were hoping to write? Why or why not? So again, this is a successful tool that you can use to structure your study session so that you can set yourself up for success.
So how would this look like for a Spanish course? If you're using Quizlet, begin by looking at the words and their definition. And, quiz yourself after and avoid guessing. This is really helpful, Do your best to try and know the answer. And one thing that I love to do with when I don't know a word, I like to use the context of things and look at what's around the word. And that will help you a lot. Review notes that you take during class, as well as rewatching Zoom classes. I know that, as we keep mentioning this, how important it is to understand that this year is different than other years. We're in a pandemic. We're always on screen. Most of your class will be online. I doubt there are many remote hybrid courses. And so it's always, maybe sometimes you're not really paying that much attention to Zoom classes. So it's always important to, if that's the case, rewatch your Zoom class. And especially if you're working on pronunciation, maybe just going over that and seeing how the professor says it, and set time aside to get over what you know and don't know. So you can understand. It's almost like you're assessing yourself, the work that you're doing. But an example using the graph, I would say, the beginning, set a goal. Okay, I want to work on doing the noun male, masculine versus feminine. So for these 45 minutes, that's what I'm going to work on. And you go through things that you've gone in your classroom, you've worked on, go through your notes, check on okay, well, maybe even try using what you see in your household, sit down and be like, okay, la lámpara or le lámpara, which one is it? And it's like la lámpara. And then why is it feminine? And then for that 10-minute walk, 10-minute reward time, I would definitely recommend, as Marina said, get off of your TV, your laptop, just because so much screen time, especially if you don't have any, like, I know there's like a blue screen glasses or anything, but if you don't have any of that, especially during this time, to go, if you can, and if you're in a space where you're comfortable and safe, go for a walk. If not, exercise, even just do a couple push-ups, or if you can't do that, um, pull out a book, something where you can just visually and physically and emotionally and mentally just take a break. And that's very helpful. And eat a snack. That's always good. And lastly, go back. So was I able to learn what I wanted to know, the noun for masculine and feminine? Was I able to do that successfully? And if you were, good, props to you. And if you weren't, maybe I wasn't able to fully focus because I had my phone with me and I kept looking at it, or maybe I wasn't able to because the lecture wasn't recorded. And just, use that as a tool to help you see whether or not this was a successful study session or not.
Alrighty. So again, thank you for attending our workshop. We discussed the study cycle and we analyzed as to why this is a successful tool / approach that you can use to be successful at PSU and in your Spanish courses. Again, thank you for attending. If you still are having trouble staying motivated or staying focused or being successful in your courses, meet with me or meet with Diana, meet with any academic coach or any tutor. It doesn't have to be us. Just, again, take initiative over your own learning. Take control over your own learning and just do the best take the best steps so that you can be as successful as you can. Meeting with us will allow you to go over self-management tips or study strategy tips, also motivation, anything like that. We will discuss that with you. You can schedule an academic coaching appointment by going to the Learning Center website, and by reading the coaches' bios, you'll be able to see a link there so that you can book an appointment. And you can also book an appointment with tutors by downloading the Penji app. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or Diana. My email is mnajera2@pdx.edu. That's MNAJERA2@pdx.edu.
And my email is Santiago, SANTIAG 5 @pdx.edu.